Hi everyone, let's work through problem 23-1, which is a demonstration of futures. What is the implied interest rate on a treasury bond, $100,000 futures contract that's settled at 116? If interest rates increase by 1%, what then would be the contract's new value? Okay, I think this problem needs to tell you a couple key assumptions. The treasury bond is one that pays semi-annual interest. It pays 6%, and I guess the way I want to state that, it has a stated interest rate or a contract rate of 6%. Okay, that's the point I want to make here, is the assumption we'll use to solve this. Okay, let's get started now. The settled amount, what that means is, and I've typed that in, let me hit the F2 so you can see that, it's expressed as a percentage of 100. So 116, the 16 implies 16/32. Okay, so we would take 100 plus 16/32 and divide that by 100. Now what that means is it is settling at 1.005 of par. Okay? So then we need to put in the par amount, the contract amount of the bonds. Okay, and that's $100,000. Let me enter that as currency. Alright, now we then need to calculate the present value of the bond, and that is simply the futures contract that's settled times the contract amount of the bond. So we'll multiply those first two numbers, and we come up with present value of the bonds of 100,500. Okay, now my assumptions. The stated interest, I'm going to assume it's 6%. Okay, and again, if it's a semi-annual bond, one other assumption. This has to be a 20-year semi-annual bond. Okay, we would need to know that in order to answer this question. So the number of periods would be 20 times 2, right, for 40. Okay, then we could calculate the payment. I'll just abbreviate that as PMT, and the payment would be equal to the 100,000 times the 6% divided by 2, since it's a semi-annual payment, or $3,000. We really don't need that $sign there at that point. Okay, and the future value of the bond is equal to the contract value, 100,000. Okay, so the question is, what's the implied interest rate on this, on the treasury bond? Alright, well, we would need to calculate the rate per period, and how we would do that is use Excel's rate function. Okay, so the number of periods is 40. Here, why don't I key this in this way, and then hit the this button so we get a little pop-up here. I'll move this where you can see it. So the number of periods is 40. Okay, the payment amount is the $3,000 on the 100,000 bonds, which is 6% divided by 2. It's paid twice a year. The present value of the bond, I'm going to enter that as a negative, right? Because we've got to enter one as a negative for the other to come up with a positive number. So I'll multiply that times -1. You know, another way of doing that is we could just do minus LB11. Okay, get the same thing. And then the future value, of course, is the $100,000. Now, that tells us the implied rate in this futures contract. To equate that to an annual rate, we would multiply that times 2. Okay, so if it's basically 5.96%. Let me bold that because that's the answer we were looking for in the first part of P23-1. Now the second sentence. If interest rates increase by 1%, what would be the contract's new value? Okay, why don't we put a title here and say increase up 1%. Okay, if if we put that there, now what I want to do is just copy over to start with, and then we'll change what we need to change. Okay, these two become irrelevant, and right here is what we need to solve. What would be the contract's new value? Well, that would be the present value. Okay, so to come up with the present value of the contract, actually this could say present value of the bond, or of the let me change that to present value of the futures contract. Okay, so that is a more accurate statement of what it is. We're going to solve for that. Now, what we need to plug in here is that amount plus 1%, because they say it increases by 1%. Okay, let me turn that into the same kind of format that we have here. So the numbers come out exactly the same. But then this has to be that cell divided by 2, right, to come up with the rate per period. If I added 1% here, divide it by 2 to plug it in here. Okay, let's get these to format the same way. Okay, and now what we need to do is solve for the present value of that futures contract. So I'll use the present value function. Let me hit one other character. Present value left paren. Then I can click on the formula bar. Okay, now the rate is that periodic rate in cell C17. The number of periods don't change. It's still 40. The payment amount wouldn't change, $3,000 on 100,000 of bonds. The future value again wouldn't change, 100. Okay, and when we're done, we will have calculated a present value, and I simply will switch the sign, multiplying it times -1. Okay, turn that into that format there would work fine. And in round dollars, what that tells us is, let me bold that, that if interest rates increase by 1%, the contract's new value would change from a present value of $100,500. It would drop to $89,749. And that's the solution to problem 23-1, dealing with futures.